Hello, it's Keith here, and this is the third in the YQuest series of my programming tutorials. Now, we've been looking at this little game I wrote during my live streams on my Chibiakima's live channel. You can go ahead and watch those if you want. I think there were 9 in total, each around 2 hours, and I managed to make this little game. This was an extension of the original code from the Super Simple series, where we had a smiley moving around the screen. Made a few tweaks, and we've managed to make something resembling a little game that I'm quite terrible at playing, unfortunately. But a little game it is. It's based on an old DOS game I used to enjoy called YQuest. The same as the Grime. If I have a little game I remember fondly that is simple enough that I think I can remake it for a bit of fun and a bit of educational purposes, then I do. And in this case, I made this little YQuest game. It's free open source, so you can go to my website. It's in the sources 7-zip for the Z80 series, and you can go ahead and do whatever you want with it. I really don't care. Okay, so we're going to go over some more of the code today. We had a look at some of the multi-platform code last time. We're going to have a look at some more this time. So we're going to be looking at from this point now. And the first part is the draw UI routine. This draws the little bits of text on the screen. There's like the score, the lives, and the crystals remaining, the level, things like that. So that's all we do here. Also, you'll notice it's actually updating the sprite frame. There's up to 4 frames of animation on the game code. I'm planning actually for all of the versions to have 4 frames, but if I was trying to work on a very limited memory system like the TI-83 or the computer's Lynx, maybe I would have had to cut down some of the frames of animation, but not in this case. But anyway, so here we're incrementing the current frame and making sure that when we get to frame 5, if you will, or frame 4, depending on whether you're 0 or 1 based, we're just looping around those frames of animation. Next, we're going to be showing some bits of text to the screen and some numbers. We're using the locate command to select an X and Y position, and we're using print string to show the strings. The strings we saw before were in the data definitions. Here they are. They will just change slightly on the Game Gear. They're too long, so I had to really shrink them down, but you have to make a few sacrifices occasionally. So in this case, we're selecting the top left corner for the text. We're showing the lives string, and then we're loading the lives in from the lives memory address, adding 0, because it would actually mess up if it went over 9, I guess. It shouldn't be a problem though. And then we're printing that character to the screen. Here we're using the show decimal routine to print the number of crystals to the screen. I can't remember when I wrote show decimal. Might have actually been part of the Chibi Aliens code, but it's basically copied from Chibiakima's originally. So that's just showing a decimal number to the screen here. And we've also got this BCD show routine, which I think I did in the multi-platform series originally. I think that's multi-platform code. It just shows a 4-byte packed, so that's 8 digits, binary coded decimal string, if you will, to the screen. So these are just showing various bits of data to the screen, just as a sort of nicety, and to give the game a proper feel of having some idea of what level you're on, how many crystals you've got left, how many lives you've got. I think it just adds to the game. It's not an essential stuff though. The level init routine is a little bit complicated. This is what defines the levels that we play, because although the object positions are random, the level contents are not. We saw these in the data definitions lesson, which was the first one. So the level map contains pointers to each of the level definitions, and a level definition looks something like this. A 2-byte header, which is basically just the crystal count, and then a sequence of objects ending with a 255 empty object, which will fill out the 40 object array that contains the enemies, the crystals, and also the mines. So here we go. So the first thing we're doing is we're loading the base of that level map, which is the set of pointers here, and then we are selecting the pointer for the current level. So we load in the current level number, we strip out all but the bottom 4 bits because there's only 16 definitions, it will cycle after that. And then we are doubling it because it's 2 bytes per definition. We're then reading in the address of the current level map pointer. We're now going to load in the crystal count because that was the first byte of the definition here. And then we're going to skip over the next one because it doesn't do anything in this current format. So we're just skipping over there. Then we're going to define the objects, or the enemies as they're called in this case. So there's up to 40, so we load B with 40, and then we load the pointer to the object array, which is where in RAM they're stored. We load in the enemy count into D, and then we load the enemy number into A here, and this is the enemy definition. So in the case of 1 here, this would be the definition you see just here. That would be that one. So that's what we're doing here. So we're multiplying by 8 here, shifting to the left 3 times to multiply by 8, and we're calculating the offset within the enemy definitions, and that's what you just saw here. That's these. So we're calculating what the position of the enemy definition is, and then we're copying all of the data of that enemy definition into the current object. And we're doing this repeatedly until D reaches 0 here. And that D was defined just up here by the enemy count. Now, for each object, once we've defined the fixed values, the acceleration, the sprite, the collision program, we're then calculating a random object position with this function just here. And then what we do is we need to check that we are defining a new random position for the object that isn't overlapping any other object. And we had the code we looked at before, safe randomize object position, that will do this for us. We only need to compare the current object to all the previous objects. We don't want to compare to the future objects we haven't defined yet. So we're loading C with the current number of the enemy that we are currently defining here, and then we're running this safe random object position routine, which will do that for us. We need to repeat this until we've defined all of the object positions, but once we have, we've now actually positioned all of our objects for the level. The next thing we need to do is we need to clear any bullets that the enemies or player has shot. Both bullet arrays, there's 2 separate ones, are consecutive within memory. Here's the player one, and here's the enemy one, and they're both the same size, 8 bytes per bullet, 8 bullets. And what we're doing here is we're taking advantage of this by loading the byte count as the count of the bullets times the size of each bullet, 8 bytes, times 2 because the player bullet array and the enemy bullet array. And we're then going to load every byte of those as 255. And this is just to clear them out because a collision program of 255 is an unused object. Now, there is a special case here. Once we've got to the last object within the initialization, we actually just need to pop off the Y register and increase it before jumping back, ready to process the next object up here. So that's just a sort of branch out routine here to do that for us. Whenever the player dies or the level starts, we need to reset the player's position and also make them invincible and stop any sound. So what we're doing here, 48 is the invincibility timeout. When invincibility is greater than 0, the player can't be hurt and their icon will flicker. And we're just turning off the sound with this routine here. And then here we're copying the template of the player settings to the current player settings. There's the template. And where is it? There is the player settings. So we're just copying that with an LDIR. We could do that with a clear routine and also then with a sort of manual definition of a couple of bytes, but I thought that would be easier. Here's the draw player routine here. It's pretty straightforward. So this will start the player being drawn. So we're loading in the address of the player object into IX here, checking if the player is invincible. If they are, we're decreasing the invincibility count. If they're not, we're just skipping over that. If the player is invincible, then every other tick we don't want to draw the player object, and so we're skipping this every other tick if the invincibility is greater than 0 here. We're using the draw object routine, which handles the drawing of all animated sprites within the game. It doesn't handle the drawing of the fonts, which is also sprites, but animated sprites it does. So that's what's doing that. Okay, draw and move handles the majority of the animation of the level code as the sort of game loop is running. So first of all, here we're drawing the player bullets. We're not handling the actual logic, we're just drawing the sprites. We're doing this first because we're then going to draw the player, and we want the player to be above the player's bullets, otherwise the player sprite will get messed up. But we don't want to do the logic of the bullets because it takes too long and it would cause the player sprite to flicker. So that's why we're doing it there. So here we're going through each object, clearing off the old bullet, drawing the position of the new bullet, and moving through the loop by adding 8 because the object byte size is 8 here. And we're doing that for all 8 of the player bullets here. We're then drawing the player. Now we want to do the logic of the player bullets here. That's what we're doing just here. And what we're doing here is we're checking if any of the player's bullets have hit any of the objects. So we've got the enemy count here, which will be 40. We've got the object array for the enemies just here. We're loading that into IY. And we're going to look at each object and we're going to check what its collision program is. If the collision program is 1, then it's a crystal, and crystals aren't hurt by the bullets. If it's 250, then it's a dead object an object that's already been killed, or it's an unused object. 255 is an unused object. And if it's a 4, then that's a mine. The mines hurt the player, but the player can't shoot them. So we're just checking for these, and in any case that the bullet has collided but has no effect, we would want to skip down to here. So if we get to this point, we have an object that would potentially be hurt by a bullet. So what we're doing next is we're loading the position of the player's bullet, we're loading the position of the enemy. You notice we're using IX for the player's bullet and IY for the enemy object here. And then we're using the range test routine, and this we defined in a previous lesson. This is going to check if the object is within close range of the other object. So here's the close range check here, and that will check if the two objects are basically overlapping each other. And if they are, then we will get a carry returned. So if there's no carry, then the objects aren't overlapping. So we just skip on and carry on as if the object hadn't been hit, because it hasn't. If it has been hit, then we've already decided this is an object that would be killed by a bullet. So we're going to give the player some score. That's what it does. We're then going to remove the old enemy sprite because it's been killed. And we're going to set the collision program of the enemy to 254. Now this is a dead object that will come back. So we're setting it to 254 because it will come back, not 255, which would just make it dead forever. We then make a sound here by defining a chibi sound effect here in playing SFX. And when we get to this point, we've got to check the next object. We're actually checking multiple objects. In theory, I suppose there could be two objects over the top of each other, two enemies or something. And I guess you could kill them all with one shot if you're some kind of amazing sharpshooter. This is the code that will move on to the next bullet within the player's array though. So all of this here is handling the player's bullets. We then have some code for the enemies. Each enemy needs to be drawn. So we got the object array here, the 40 enemies, and we're going to clear the original position of the object on the screen, but only if the object is moving. The mines that are static, we're not going to do that. They're just going to stay in a fixed position, so we don't want them to flicker unnecessarily. So we won't blank the object position unless the object is moving. Next, we draw the new position of the object, and then we're going to run this object collision routine, which is going to check if the player has collided with that object. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to check the collision program and see if the collision program is 254. Remember, 254 is an object that's been killed by the player. If it's been killed by the player at some point, we're going to respawn it. And the way I've done this is with a random number. So we select a random number, we mask out the bottom 6 bits, and if they are 0, then we're actually going to bring the object back. And to do that, we give it a collision program of 0, which is a harmful object to the player. We make a sound so that the player knows something just happened, watch out, another enemy to come back. And we do that for each of the objects within the loop, adding object byte size, which is 8 bytes, to IX to move to the next object there. So now we're going to do the same for the enemy bullets, and the code that does that is just here. So we're loading in the count of the bullets, which is 8 into B, the address of the array into IX, and then we're processing each bullet. First we delete the old position of the sprite, we then draw the new sprite, and then we load in the position of the bullet into DE, we load in the position of the player into BC, and we use our range test routine, which will check if the bullet has hit the player. If there is a carry, then the player has been hurt, and that will call this routine here, which we'll see later on. Otherwise, we just skip over that down to here and move on to the next bullet. Now, the end of this routine is handling the sound. Now, playing SFX is the current sound, and playing SFX2 is the last sound. If the two are the same, the sound hasn't changed, but if they're different, we need to send the sound effect to Chibi Sound to update the sound effect. And if there is no sound, we're just clearing the sound effect. Finally, there was a reference to the apply score routine before. It's very simple. All it does is it loads the destination as the player score, the bytes as 4, and then it uses BCD add, which I believe we looked at in our multi-platform series, which is a sort of sample binary coded decimal routine, which will add 2 binary coded decimal values together, and that will update our score, giving our player a bit of score, and the amount of score they get will just depend on what template BCD we passed on to it here, and so in that case we're adding 5 points. Okay, So there we go. That's all we're going to cover today. There's still some more code, but we're going to split this into sections because it takes quite a lot of time for me to prepare. I hope you found this interesting. I mean, as you should know, all of this is free and open source. If you go to my website, you can download it. It's all in the sources.7zip on the Z80 site. And you're welcome to make whatever of it you will. If you somehow manage to sell it, then I totally encourage you to do that. Good luck to you. I hope you've enjoyed it though, and I hope you'll find it useful in your programming adventures. Thanks for watching today, and goodbye.